All right, thanks. Call the meeting to order. First item on the agenda is approval of minutes. Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
I, Commissioner Kelly, approve the minutes.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion?
No.
All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carries.
I'll abstain, Chair. think I was absent that day.
Okay, thank you. The next is public comment. Is there anybody? Obviously, there's nobody in the room. Is there anybody online? Okay. Dispense with that one. Action items. First on the agenda is a public hearing on property line adjustments and minor variance text amendments. Nicole.
Good evening, Commissioners. For the record, Nicole Mardell, Senior Planner with Deschutes County Community Development. Did want to note, doesn't look like we have anyone here in person or online, but we will just open the hearing just for a good procedure, and I'll give a brief staff report. So with that, start sharing my screen here, and I will start going through the hearing procedures here to open the hearing. So this is the time and place set for a hearing on file number 247-25-399-TA concerning amendments relating to property line adjustments and minor variance procedures. Record materials are located on the project website, which can be found at bit.ly/399TA. Staff will outline the hearing procedures that will be followed. The Planning Commission will hear oral testimony, receive written testimony, and consider the testimony submitted at this hearing. This hearing is also being recorded. The Commission may make a decision on this matter today, continue the public hearing to a date certain, or leave the written record open for a specified period of time. The hearing will be conducted in the following order. First, staff representing Deschutes County as the applicant will give a brief report on this issue. We will then take testimony from agencies and any interested persons. And following testimony, the Commission can request staff to answer any additional questions. This is a hybrid public hearing with both in-person and remote participation options. For in-person participants, if you wish to testify, please fill out a blue sign-up sheet at the side of the room and submit that to staff. After your name is called, please come up to one of the tables at the front of the room before beginning your testimony. And before starting testimony, please provide your first and last name as well as your mailing address. For remote participants, if you wish to testify, you must be logged into Zoom or have called in using the Zoom dial-in option. When the chair asks if anyone would like to testify, you will need to use the raise hand feature to notify the Commission. To do this, you need to press the raise hand button on your computer or smart device, or if you called in, dial *9. In addition to oral testimony, if anyone has written testimony, please hand that to me if you're in person, or if you're participating remotely, you can submit that via email to my address shown on the screen here. The chair and staff are responsible for conducting an orderly hearing. Any testimony or behavior which is inappropriate will be addressed and may result in that member of the public being removed from the hearing. Questions to and from the chair may be entertained at any time at the chair's discretion. Cross-examination of people testifying will not be allowed. However, if any person wishes to ask a question of another, please direct your question to the chair after being recognized. The chair is free to decide whether or not to ask such questions of the person testifying. Prior to commencement of the hearing, any party may challenge the qualifications of any commissioner for conflicts of interest. This challenge must be documented with specific reasons supported by facts. Should any commissioner be challenged, the member may disqualify himself or herself, withdraw from the hearing, or make a statement on the record of their capacity to hear and decide the issue. At this time, do any members of the commission need to set forth any information that may be perceived as a conflict of interest?
Does any commissioner have anything to disclose? And if so, state the nature of same and whether you can proceed.
No.
Excellent. Does any party wish to challenge any commissioner based on conflicts of interest?
As no challengers are presented, the hearing is now open. Staff will proceed with a brief report.
Thank you very much, commissioners. So I do want to note this will be pretty similar to the presentation that you heard at the work session, but wanted to note that Commissioner Hoefkamp, I believe, wasn't in attendance at that meeting, so I will go through it today, and for anyone who may be listening in. So the project purpose for these text amendments are to generally simplify the property line adjustment process by aligning our local code with state standards. So we're proposing to amend the Deschutes County Code to remove local criteria for lot line adjustments involving parcels smaller than the minimum lot size that go beyond the state standards, and also clarify the process and procedure by which they're reviewed. There's some historical context. Pre-1991, there were very limited regulations in local code and state law. Starting in 1991, the Board of County Commissioners adopted a minor variance procedure for property line adjustments involving what I'll call substandard lots, so lots below the minimum lot size for that respective zone. And they placed a 10% area reduction limit associated with this type of property line adjustment. So below that size, no variance was required, and greater than that, the applicant would be required to submit for a major variance, which has more complicated and discretionary review criteria. We have limited info on why this was added. It was part of a larger package to modernize the code, but we can assume that the general goal was to preserve standard sized lots where possible. And that 10% limitation on lot reduction was perhaps a way to do that when looking at things like our 10-acre rural residential or multiple use agricultural zones. By limiting it to 10 acres, you can keep it pretty close to that 10-acre minimum lot size while still allowing for some flexibility in unique situations. In 2010, the board amended code to the current process, which allows for an area reduction beyond that 10% on non-resource lands, so not EFU and not forest lands, when you fit into very certain specific circumstances. So this was sort of a carve-out granted to relieve ongoing property line issues that were happening in some historic subdivisions, specifically in the Dustin Road subdivision near Lapine. So there were some issues with landmarking and surveying and the actual monumenting of property lines. So because so many property owners were affected, the goal of adopting this code from the board was to allow a quick, relatively affordable path for folks to correct those issues. Between 2008 and the present, so kind of overlapping this time frame, the state was working on requirements for lot line adjustments involving substandard lots. So they created ORS 92-192, and this was intended to increase protections for lot area-based standards. So it created a clear process and requirements for property line adjustments involving parcels below the minimum lot size. And the requirements are pretty robust and nuanced, especially when compared to county code. They also include specific requirements for farm and forest as well. It appears that they have kind of two goals in adopting ORS 92-192. The first being to preserve standard size lots where possible. And the second, specific to the farm and forest standards for these types of adjustments, it appears that they have specific rules that tie into dwelling eligibility requirements. So because EFU and forest land are so heavily regulated in terms of which dwellings are allowed, how you qualify. Many of them are allowed based on acreage requirements. So there's some specific standards in ORS 92-192 that discuss how and when you can move land associated with substandard lots and when you are ineligible due to things like becoming newly eligible for a farm-related dwelling, for instance. The current situation and why this topic has arisen is that these regulations can cause complications, especially due to the overlaps with 92-192. So our current process applies both the state code and the local code, so there are often conflicting requirements. Specifically, we've heard quite a bit from property owners over the years about concern with that 10% area reduction rule. There's been a lot of feedback that this complicates situations that state law really doesn't see the need to regulate. So for instance, if you're trying to correct a property line issue involving, say, a fence, if your neighbor's fence is on your property, you might use a lot line adjustment to do that. But if you have a substandard lot that's large acreage, maybe in the EFU or forest zone, you can run into an issue with that 10% area reduction limitation. So we have heard about this provision many times over the years, and it was added to our work plan in 2020. And this year, the board heard testimony during the CDD work plan review to prioritize it. So we heard from Adam Smith at that time asking for the board to initiate the text amendment. The board at that meeting did direct staff to move forward and prioritize this, specifically to remove that local requirement and instead apply state law directly. I wanted to note ORS 92-192, I've provided pretty extensive detail in the packet, both for the work session and the hearing tonight, a variety of figures that show how the ORS 92-192 functions. I'm not going to go into it tonight just because it's getting a bit into the weeds, but we thought that might be helpful to see what those state regulations are. With that, the proposed amendments, we're proposing to add 18-132-020D to clarify that property line adjustments are not eligible for variances. And if it complies with ORS 92-192, you do not need a variance. If you meet those requirements, it could be reviewed by staff under again, those specific rules. We're proposing to add 18-132-025C to clarify, again, that property line adjustments are not eligible for variances, and that's under our minor variance requirement section. So kind of in the two places, just to make sure there's no confusion among staff with reviewing these. And then we're also proposing to remove those local requirements, both in 25B and 25C. With that, in terms of comments, we have not received any agency comments to date, and we've only received one public comment from Adam Smith, who could not be here tonight, but he plans on participating during the board's hearing process. And he just had some minor suggestions for the findings, the introduction of the topic and the findings. And he also noted it might not be necessary to call out ORS 92-192 in our local code. But in talking with staff, we think it's helpful, again, for future planners, just to reduce any confusion in the future. So with that, I welcome any questions. Oh, apologies. Next steps. So your options to move forward, you can continue the hearing to a date and time certain, close the hearing and leave the written record open, close the hearing and set a date for deliberations, or close the hearing and commence deliberations. And with that, I welcome any questions.
Great, thank you. Is there any commissioners have any questions? All right, I don't see anybody from the public here. Is there anybody online? That makes for another short hearing.
Mhm.
So, what's your pleasure?
See what the options are.
Is there a motion to do something with this hearing?
A stab.
Okay,
Will you help support me or will you? Okay, I motion that we commence deliberations.
okay, well, you're suggesting that we close the hearing and commence
Commence.
deliberations. Okay, is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, is there any discussion on the motion?
No, I'm here for discussion, obviously, but my thought is that we don't have really any public comments or public input, and I feel it's pretty straightforward.
Any other opinions or comments? I know you want to say something.
Not really.
Okay.
Yeah. Just thinking about it.
Okay. Do we have any commissioners online? Okay.
Commissioner Stottcamp.
Okay. Well, if there's no other discussion, all those in favor of the motion, say aye.
I
Aye.
All those opposed? Carries. This will proceed with deliberations. Anybody have any discussion? Okay. Is there a motion to close deliberations and recommend or whatever you want to do with this proposal? Do adopt, don't adopt. I'm open to ideas.
I recommend to adopt adopt that.
You move, you're moving that we close deliberations and recommended adoption of the recommendations.
I just don't feel like I'm being a little bold and I don't want to, I don't want to rush this process, but I also don't want to waste our time by creating a whole nother meeting and going through the whole process again when I think we all understand and we all see the logic of adopting the state's mandates.
So is there a second?
I second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Now, is there any other discussion on what we want to do? Okay. If not, all those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed? Carries. That was quick and easy.
Thank you very much. Commissioner.
All right. Next up, we have deliberations on dark sky text amendments. Tanya, you're up. Or you're it.
Been a record for a very fast hearing. Um, Good evening. For the record, Tanya Saltzman, Senior Planner. I'm here tonight. You can hear me?
We can't.
It's finicky lately, so I'm here to take the Planning Commission through deliberations concerning the Dark Skies text amendment, which is file number 247-25000-377 TA. Just a quick refresher on the procedures thus far. Staff submitted the required 35-day post-acknowledgement plan amendment, otherwise known as a PAPA, to the Department of Land Conservation and Development on June 5th. Staff presented the proposed amendments to the Planning Commission at a work session on June 26th. The hearing was held at the most recent Planning Commission meeting last July 10th. And at that time, the oral portion of the public hearing was closed and the written record was held open until July 16th. And that brings us to today, when we are here to deliberate. The memo that I prepared for you, I don't have a slideshow for you tonight, because it's fairly straightforward. But the memo outlines the background of the history that you have heard probably at least twice at this point. So I'm not going to belabor that, of just why we're pursuing these, why the board directed staff to pursue the dark skies text amendments. A little summary about the regulations that are in place right now that were put in place in 1994. Some of the challenges that we've undergone, I would say. And then just a brief summary of the amendments, the proposed amendments, and I'll go through those fairly quickly, but we modified the definitions. In general, the amendments we tried to make them streamlined and more organized and just more logical, and took out the stuff that was outdated or irrelevant. So with that, the definitions were modified. They were very clunky. They had a separate chapter for each term, which I'm not quite sure why that happened, but we streamlined those, consolidated them. We removed definitions of certain types of light fixtures that are no longer referred to, different types of bulbs, added some new definitions for, most significantly, downcast, light trespass, and string lights. The amendments revise the purpose statement to reflect a suggestion from Dark Sky International from back when the Planning Commission held some panel discussions. That purpose statement aims to balance the right of people to light their property with acknowledging the benefits of lighting it maybe a little bit less, and recognizing that the night skies are considered an asset and a resource in Central Oregon. We added in guiding principles, which is sort of a new stylistic thing to our zoning code. These things come directly from the Dark Sky International recommendations and their guidelines. They're not necessarily regulatory in our code, but they're just provided as guiding principles. We thought that would be helpful for people as they read the code. And then generally, the primary requirements in the code boil down to three requirements. Lights must be downcast, fully shielded, and light trespass is prohibited. So we just tried to kind of streamline that. And with that, we removed a lot of the tables that referred to different brightnesses and different types of light bulbs that are no longer in use. The amendments also modified and consolidated the prohibitions and exemptions. Some of them were a little bit kind of overlapping. So we aim to make those a little true to their meaning. Sometimes the prohibitions weren't actually prohibitions, they were just exemptions. So we consolidated those. As far as the hearing testimony, 13 individuals provided written testimony, and I will say that probably the packet that I emailed you says 11. Right after I sent it out, it was pointed out to me that we received 2 additional pieces of testimony that had gone into the Planning Commission junk folder. So thanks, Nicole, for that heads up. But they were immediately put into the record. Those 2 pieces of testimony were in general support of the Dark Skies amendments. So if you're noticing that discrepancy, that's why it's there. 3 individuals provided testimony during the hearing. As always, the full written comments are available in the record for the Planning Commission's reference. The memo summarizes the comments that have been received, so throughout the open record period as well as during the hearing. I can go through them. I can not go through them. In general, the way we've been doing things is the Planning Commission can choose to elevate or discuss those matters that are deemed important to you all as you want. When issuing a recommendation to the board, you can choose to be specific or general, or just what we do as staff is we relay the contents of the discussion that you have. So, X was an issue, Y was not an issue, that type of thing. So my job is to capture what is discussed tonight and bring that forward to the board. If you'd like, I can go over the comments received, or you can just start right now by discussing, however the chair would like to proceed.
How about maybe just kind of a summary of kind of the highlights?
Yeah, absolutely. In general, every comment that was received, besides the couple that were just clarifying questions, were in support of this as a concept. There was no ambiguity about that. Let's see. Oh, sorry. 7 of them were just as simple as that, supporting adopting the amendments as written. Others had a few clarifying questions. One of them we went over in the hearing last week or 2 weeks ago concerning lighting for the flag, and we resolved that. That has not been changed since the previous iteration of the code. The flag is still permitted to be lit pursuant to the U.S. flag code. We don't specifically call out the U.S. flag code in our code, but it's they talk to each other. So we had a couple of suggestions about revising definitions of light trespass. We had a suggestion to revise the holiday lighting exemption to better reflect current practices. The current recommendation in our proposal is 45 days cumulatively in a calendar year. This one suggestion was no more than 45 days in a single event and 90 days cumulatively. So I think their point was that it's not just the Christmas season that people do holiday lights, so holiday lights can be other times as well. And there is another comment relating to holiday lighting that was provided by Bill Kowalik, who provided the table. He's from Dark Skies, Oregon. I'm just going to jump around a little bit. He provided testimony written before the hearing. He attended the hearing and provided some very helpful comments, and then followed up with a table with further recommendations. And pertaining to holiday lighting, he and Dark Sky Oregon suggested fixed dates just for less ambiguity. So I thought that was interesting, and that's I think it was December. I can't read anymore. December 15th. It was fixed dates rather than just December 1st. I'll find it eventually, but December 1st to January 15th. So that's a slightly different concept. And so in general, Dark Sky Oregon had a lot of recommendations, and we really value their participation in this whole process. They emphasize the importance or the benefits of having amber lights, noting that they're preferable in general for wildlife and bird migration and things like that, and just kind of harshness to the human eye, and recommended certain color temperatures, which are measured in kelvins, for the ideal types of bulbs. And there was some discussion about where those are available. They're generally available online. Recommendations for greenhouse lighting to be subject to the same regulations as those for marijuana facilities. In other words, you shouldn't be able to see it. I think his phrase was, it looks like a giant light bulb if it's lit from inside. So that recommendation was to have either drapes or curtains or something to stop that from occurring during certain hours. General recommendations for 11 p.m. lights off for pretty much most lights, including advertising signs, with an exception for shielded amber lights. There are some proposed exceptions for commercial businesses staying lit within half an hour or an hour, depending on the business of that business closure. Continuing on some of the recommendations from Dark Sky Oregon, they requested evaluation of lighting plans before approval and requested inspection during or after construction. And that was a topic of our conversation throughout the work session as well as the hearing. Moving on to other testimony, we received a question about the necessity of exemptions for string lights, which staff's response is that those were previously unregulated at all. So this is kind of a new thing and it's more prevalent. So this is the reason for providing some guardrails to it, but recognizing that they are kind of a unique lighting situation. You can't exactly have a fully shielded individual bulb. So this was our staff's attempt to regulate those in some manner. And it's following the example of the City of Sisters. Commissioner Williams also provided some comments. So she's unable to be here tonight. So her comments kind of function as a hybrid between comments and deliberations in a sense. She provided a general support for the amendments. She understood the lack of resources for enforcement and supports the emphasis on educational efforts. And as I think she noted in the work session and the hearing, she had some great ideas about education, things we could potentially do with tax or mailers and the property tax bills and that type of thing. And that's it for the individuals. We also received testimony from two government representatives. We received testimony from Scott Woodford, who's the CDD director in the City of Sisters. We had reached out to him to ask kind of how they do things over there. They do review lighting plans during the building permit process, and the planning department or the planning individuals inspect at the time of occupancy. They're also pursuing a lot of education methods, such as mailers and community events, social media. Much like Deschutes County, their code enforcement is complaint-based, and they begin with a letter of, I'm not sure how mean the letter is or how polite, but they do begin, first saying, there has been a violation and acknowledging that and just trying to help get people into compliance, which is usually what we often try to do as well. And then lastly, our Deschutes County building official, Randy Scheid, he noted that per the state law, doing inspections of lighting, the way CDD interprets it is kind of beyond the scope of what is tasked with building departments in terms of building safety and in accordance with the OAR. He's also noted, which was interesting, he said, it's been my observation that most of our non-compliant dark sky lighting fixtures were installed without permits or inspection well after any final inspection was made, which is kind of an interesting point. You could have someone check it, but then 2 months later swap it out for an illegal fixture. I'm not sure the solution to that, but he emphasized the importance of education and suggested potential land use sign-off or perhaps a property owner affidavit signing saying, I'm complying with these lighting, or I will comply with the lighting ordinance. So that was an idea that he suggested. That is my long-winded summary of all of the input that has been received. Again, in general, in favor of these amendments as a whole, and just there's just varying levels of detail that people suggested or had questions on. So the Planning Commission now can choose to continue deliberations or start and continue deliberations, close deliberations and propose a recommendation during this meeting. And I'll remind you that ultimately the Planning Commission will provide a recommendation to the board, and they'll have their own hearing. The options for recommendations include approving the amendments as drafted, approving them with suggested edits or suggestions, approving certain parts, denying others, denying them altogether, or other. Usually we don't get to other, but we like to have it as an option. So that's the way it goes. And I will relay kind of all of the the tone of the conversation and issues that the planning commission chooses to elevate. So with that, I turn it back to the chair and
I have a quick question. Under nonconformance, it had under 1 sub B, it provides for conformance within 5 years of the date of adoption. However, the previous required 6 years from the date of adoption in 2000. So you've got this current set of rules that everyone is supposed to be in compliance with within the next year. And now they've got essentially a 5-year extension. Is there a way to transition that or catch up with that, or they just automatically get a 5-year extension to comply?
well, that's a good question.
Because they were almost, they were within a year of having to comply with the previous set of rules.
That's we could massage that somehow to figure that out, but I don't know if Peter has any suggestions, but you also, I mean, that time period was just chosen by us as a proposal, the new one.
Sure.
So you could change it to whatever. We could also insert some sort of provision linking the two together somehow, and tightening that up and making it.
And that was all I
people
was
who
wondering
are-
is,
Yeah,
I mean, you've got everything that is existing has a year to comply. And now,
Right.
under the new rules, they suddenly get another 5.
they would have to be complying with the new rules. So it is a little bit of a confusing dance there, but we could certainly work on.
And maybe that's fine. I just was
Yeah,
wondering
no,
if you had any ideas for. So. Any other comments?
Looking forward. Deliberation? Jim?
Deliberations, comments, questions, whatever you want to do.
Okay, now,
Yes, absolutely.
so, I recall in the pack, some comments about, initially when the effort was launched, from code enforcement about issues that might arise there. But I recall also that, I think a comment to the effect that, simpler language would go a good distance toward assuaging some of their concerns in terms of code enforcement. So I was gratified to see that. And in general, I'm a big proponent of code simplification. So this is one more effort to simplify a lot of things in terms of definitions and alignment with state law as well. So there always seems to be plenty of reasons why code tends to become longer and more complicated. So these efforts to simplify it, shorten it are great. And then I suppose just last, really pleased with this as topic before us, as I know my colleagues are. It's really a worthy initiative, and gratified to see it go forward. And I would want to hear from my colleagues, but I'd tend to support approving the amendments as drafted and sending them on to the commission.
Anybody else? Yes, go ahead.
I think that an interesting point was raised about how to define light trespass. I think, Chair, you had mentioned that one can define it by if the light bulb fixture is visible from your neighbor's property, even in broad daylight, then you know that when it's dark, that light is actually shining on the neighbor's property. And I thought that was notable because of what staff has said about the difficulty with enforcement or identifying light trespass during business hours. So in terms of defining light trespass, I think that it might be worth suggesting that definition, since that would be an easier one to enforce during the day, or identify, I guess, during the day, rather than the current definition.
Tanya, could you address, I was thinking there was some language in there about trespass constituting essentially anything that the neighbor can see
It's
or off the property.
The proposed definition that is in the draft says light trespass means a condition in which Light emitted by a light fixture illuminates any area beyond the property lines of the property on which the fixture is installed.
Okay, I was thinking,
Light trespass exists when a person is able to see illumination from an off-site light fixture. Light trespass does not include indirect reflection or scattering of light from mounting hardware or any other surfaces. And I believe that that was very similar to what Sisters has, but there was testimony about changing that definition slightly.
Yeah, so I'm suggesting a definition that's enforceable or identifiable, I guess, during the day. So this definition, you would be able to identify light trespass only at night because it's defined in terms of illuminating the neighbor's property. And if the light's on during the day, the sun is illuminating everything, so you're not going to be able to tell if the neighbor's light is illuminating a property or not. But if we go with the alternate suggested definition, then somebody interested in determining whether or not the light is trespassing could simply go out during the day and see that, oh, I'm standing on, this property looking at the neighbor's light fixture and I can clearly see the bulb and the fixture. So that's how we know that even if it's dark, it would actually be illuminating the neighbor's property. So if it's worded differently, then it would be more identifiable during the day.
In other words, if you can see the light fixture itself. So it's not actually about the light, like that.
Okay, so maybe there's a vocabulary issue for me because I'm not a light technician, but my understanding is, you know how like you have maybe you have your shielding or you have your thingy, and then there's a bulb in the thingy, and the bulb is what's putting out the light. I think if I'm standing on the edge of my property and I can see the neighbor's light bulb or the thingy that's putting out the light, my understanding then, and I think Chair Cyrus knows more about this because you've dealt with this, but I've heard this now from several different people that if you can see the bulb thingy that's putting out the light, then that's how you would know.
yeah, and it might offer that maybe just add a sentence that to the effect that it provides for being able to see the light source or reflective portion of the fixture. That would constitute an assumed trespass, assuming they ever turn it on. So that yes, code enforcement wouldn't actually technically have to go out at night to see the light. So that makes sense because we actually do our inspections for finals during the daytime and walk the property and look to see if we can see any reflective portion of the fixture or the bulb from the property. We don't have to have it turned on.
That's the language I was looking for. Yeah.
So that makes
Thank you.
Good,
Yeah.
good
Also,
point.
Bill Kwolek in Dark Sky, Oregon suggested his translation, which I found very helpful in general. In other words, the light emitting part of the luminaire, the thingy,
The
um,
thingy.
can be seen from offsite. For example, the bulb or part of the bulb is visible from offsite.
Yeah, the
So
bulb,
something-
but then also, I mean, we took it one step further and the fixture, because a lot of times you'll have a very large reflective fixture. You can't see the bulb itself, but the fixture illuminates and creates a very large reflected part. Because I mean, light fixture generally is for the purpose of diffuse or making the light go further and reflecting off and creating much more illumination than what a single bulb would do. Magnification, I guess, is the word I'm looking for.
The intention here is just to make it easier for a code enforcement person to identify during the day and therefore easier to enforce if there were a conflict between neighbors or a complaint. And also just to make it, just make it more clear in general.
Anybody else?
Yes.
Oh, yes, go ahead.
I'm trying to pull up the chart here, but you addressed Bill Kowalek's testimony in his chart, and which I appreciated very much. And I am in support of his suggestion for the hue of light. I don't know if that's the right word, but amber lighting and the timing of lighting, but also for greenhouses and greenhouses having some sort of covering to prevent the light trespass so they don't look like giant light bulbs, because I see those and they're very bright and they don't need to be on. So that would be, I would want to see that in our revised text amendments.
So, support for temperature as well as the greenhouse lighting.
Yes.
Thank you.
I have a
So go ahead.
a question about the greenhouse lighting, because I don't want to, stunt like farmers. So is there even a purpose? Does anyone know? Because I don't, if there is a purpose for lighting at night, a greenhouse, is it emitting heat? Is that how you heat a greenhouse?
It's like a substitute for the sun, so it's to continue growth of
Yeah,
plants.
So
basically,
they want but a shade, so a farmer would then every night put a shade over their greenhouse.
so the purpose of light is just like a lit chicken coop in the wintertime. The plants, you can force them to put on fruit or whatever based on the number of units of light and the hours of time. And that's why they use light depth, for example, where they actually put a covering over the greenhouse so to trick the plant into thinking it's fall.
Oh.
And so the hours of sunlight, you can force different things to
Okay.
happen with your crop.
Mm-hmm.
And so sometimes you light it up, sometimes you cover it over to create whatever season you're shooting for. And so that's why the illumination is to force additional growth during certain stages of the plant.
Sure, okay, makes sense. I'm just trying to balance like the light pollution with burdening, putting more work on farmers in my mind. So I'm just trying to find what's the balance of, because I would think it's a really big deal to go out and put a big shade cloth on your greenhouse every night.
I don't think you have to do it every night. You just, I mean, unless like as the times change up in the actual sky versus in your greenhouse, I've seen plenty of greenhouses that are covered all the time.
Well, and that goes
me.
back to if they actually have a greenhouse that's equipped with light depth. If you've got the covering to be able to darken the greenhouse, they've already got it covered because that's an automated type deal that goes up and down, and they could put it over at night so that you can't see the greenhouse or
Okay.
the light.
And then they are.
But it's just a function of how fancy your greenhouse is.
I have a question related to
Yes, go ahead.
So are there protections for people that are actually farming versus a person like me who I have I have a little greenhouse, but I'm not farming. I just growing vegetables from it. Like would there be exceptions to this for
General,
farming?
we have farm exemptions for farming practice, which points to the ORS definition. So that would have to be, I think there would be a distinction between sort of farming as an industry, as a business, and you and your vegetables, I think, were sad
So-
flowers.
So if Commissioner Altman's suggestion ended up being welcomed by the board, then it probably wouldn't put an undue burden on farmers because they would be exempt.
I think so. Yeah, please.
Turning on and then turning off. Oh, there we go. Okay. Peter Gutowski, Community Development Director. I think if you're going to differentiate between greenhouses that are farming related and those that aren't, you would, for your consideration, differentiate it based on the zoning. If it's on exclusive farm use zone property, the intent is, assumption is that they're, it's a farm use for the purposes of obtaining a profit. If it's not in that zone, then it's falls into Commissioner Karis's circumstance, in which case I gather you could be a little bit more restrictive.
That's helpful.
I-
And this is something that we.
I
could-
would tend to agree with that. I mean, the right to farm ordinance is specific to EFU zone. And doesn't necessarily cover the other zones because they can be more restrictive on agricultural activities.
And this is something we can work through when we get to the board. If the general consensus is, we want to have some restrictions, but we don't want to, impede farming practices, we can noodle around with it and not necessarily come to a solution tonight, but
Well, and I think it's generally under the right to farm is generally accepted farming practices. In which case, if you think somebody's being obnoxious, there's a process to convene a committee to make that determination. So,
Thank you. I'm satisfied.
anybody else?
I have a good sort of process thought, which is that I, I'm not sure if this will fit depending on what everyone else thinks, but it might be nice to have sort of a like high-end ask and a bare minimum ask or something like that. Like if there's different levels of things that the commission has a consensus on or even close to a consensus on, like, hey, we'd really like this and this is what we really like, but if you guys don't want to do that, then could we at least please have this other thing instead? I kind of want to hear everyone else's thoughts on making a sort of two-part recommendation like that, or do you guys feel like we should just be like, this is what we want, like we usually do?
I guess my opinion is that I would see we propose what we would like to see. And if the Board of Commissioners doesn't agree with any of those parts, it's certainly their wherewithal to make those decisions. But we're welcome to attend those hearings also and have input on why we did what we did and what our personal opinions are. So,
Makes
I mean, along those lines, I mean, quite frankly, I don't know what it takes to create a county-wide dark sky certification, but maybe that's a goal that should be part of the process to achieve at some point. And I do like the deadline that everyone in the county would be subject to these rules within 5 years. So there's no grandfathering or exceptions. I mean, quite frankly, I think overall, I think it's well written and I like what's being proposed. But anybody else? Go ahead.
I'm feeling like very similarly to what you just said. I really like what staff's proposed. I think it's really pragmatic, it's practical, it's streamlined. It doesn't read like a whole bunch of regulations, which be hard for some people that we really have heard from in other venues, not about this one specifically. So like that's pretty cool. On the other hand, if I'm being asked what I really want personally, I definitely would like Deschutes County to be a dark skies certified location. Like that would be amazing. I think that there's two issues here. One issue is the issue of light trespass and annoying your neighbors and conflicts between neighbors. And a different level of issue is sort of like, how are we actually affecting the night sky? So, the way this is written right now, it actually gets at both of those issues pretty well, because we're talking about shielded lighting and downward facing and things like that. So it's not going up and affecting the night sky in that way, but it doesn't address the issue of insects and the ecosystem, because the insects are still going to be affected by, having blue light thrown at the ground. So if you're asking me what I really want, it's the dark sky certification. But if the board if we're just not interested in that, I think at least at the very bare minimum here, we should be making. And the proposal right here is good for everybody, because it's actually fewer regulations, but they're more clear regulations, and the regulations that protect neighbors from conflicts with each other. So that's like a win for everyone.
Well, you're certainly welcome to propose that we move this forward with the caveat that we would like to add that at the end of the 5-year cycle that the county be or qualify for dark sky certification. I mean, we can ask for anything we want.
That sounds pretty good, actually.
But
like we're maybe talking about recommending moving forward toward dark sky certification over the next 5 years or so.
I would certainly support that. And I do like the idea of, planning commission, or excuse me, planning staff or whomever take some efforts to make sure that new construction is compliant. If the building department has to abide by state statute and can't impose it, then, maybe it can be done at a different level that, through the process. But, those are the type of things that we could put forth to the Board of Commissioners.
I have a question, and maybe
Certainly.
Nick, when you said that the city of Sisters, when they issue new building permits, they, correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought tonight you mentioned that they do look at lighting.
My understanding that their planning staff does,
they're
not their
plan-
building division.
Oh, okay,
Right.
so that's the,
Well, and I think that,
Looking at Nicole,
I think that is true only because the community development department provides building services for Sisters.
oh, they don't have,
we don't have their.
No,
oh. So
our
how
bu-
do
our
they-
build our building safety division provides building services for the city of Sisters and La Pine. So any inspection on lighting would happen by a staff member that's within City Hall. I presume it's planning, but they don't have very many planners. But it's someone that works in City Hall that is doing that assessment or inspection at the time of presumably close to final occupancy.
Commissioner Stockamp.
Yeah, I just wanted to add comment if the county's heading in the direction of thinking, if we're recommending to the board countywide certification, just to maybe pick Scott Woodford's brain a little more, the community development director for City of Sisters, since they got the certification already, just to know how detailed and strenuous the process is. My concern is just it's a very detailed process, and if county planning staff has capacity for it, because I just think of how long it took for the planning commission to host a public hearing on dark sky. I'm curious about how realistic it is to go countywide certification for dark sky. So just want to add that input for deliberation.
Okay, great. Peter.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To Commissioner Stockamp's point, and I'm not sure you were here the previous planning commission meeting, but the planning commission did acknowledge and have some very interested ideas and concepts that they thought would be worth consideration if the dark skies is adopted. The suggestion that I offered the planning commission is right now, don't worry about the logistics of the community development department. Make your recommendation on your own interests, on the testimony. Administration of dark skies will come up organically and deliberatively when we get to the board about what the community development department can or cannot do currently and what it would take to do something differently. But I don't think the planning I'm looking at on the dais, but I'm just really speaking to Commissioner Stockamp. That was a suggestion that I offered is, the planning commission should be focusing on identifying their various recommendations. And then when we get closer to the board, we can, or at the board, we can talk about how this program can be implemented, what types of options are available, what kind of capacity the community development department has, but it's just not germane, in my opinion, right now, because these are kind of budgetary matters, staffing matters, and thankfully, the planning commission doesn't have to dabble in those circumstances. So anyway, to Commissioner Stockamp, your comments, I just thought that would be helpful to reiterate those earlier remarks.
So you're suggesting essentially that we not get in the weeds on how to make it happen, just tell them what we'd like to see.
That would be my suggestion, Mr. Chairman.
Hey.
I love your suggestion. But so you know what I would like really like, it almost kind of I get goosebumpy and a little teary eyed thinking about this is like, this is one, don't look at me like I'm pathetic.
I wasn't. I was waiting to see where you're going.
It's like there's so many things in this, like in the atmosphere that's divisive, and I feel like we're all kind of unanimous. Like I don't want to speak for us all, but the vibe I'm getting is that we're all like, ooh, this is cool. I want to get behind this. And then I just feel like all the input, the public input and the testimony, and I've spoke with members of my like friends and family about it, just to, like chatter about it, because I'm learning so much about this through this process that I wanted just to share it. And so everyone I'm talking to is excited. And I just feel like more of this kind of energy, putting it out there into the community is just really wonderful. And so that's what's making me really excited about this. And then the proposition of it going forward, and then we continuing to revisit it and having some goals. It just really I think, inspires me about bringing community together.
So you won't be voting no.
No, I won't be, I'll be voting yes.
Oh, any other comments? Is there a motion?
Oh, I'll go ahead and move to recommend the amendment. And also recommend that we work toward being a dark skies certified county over the next 5 years.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any discussion?
I was just briefly scanning how to apply for and qualify for dark sky certification as a county. A lot of it's aspirational, kind of having a plan to get there. Yeah, I think that's an excellent suggestion.
Okay, great.
Maybe I should have added that we also recommend some kind of enforcement plan of some kind that's important to us also. But I don't know that I can add that. Got to see if our seconder.
You can do
Wants-
whatever you like as long as the seconder is supportive, but there is at the bottom, I'd point out that it talks about enforcement and that the violations constitute a public nuisance.
Right.
And it appear to me, and maybe Peter can correct, that code enforcement would be subject to enforcement. And from the hearing, I think we had some volunteers.
Yeah. I think maybe thank you, by the way, for that clarification. Yes, I do remember that. But I think what I maybe should have said or mean is I like the idea of maybe having home builders or homeowners sign an affidavit when they're building or whatever, any of these sort of other ideas that came from our building code, building inspector department. But something upon some.
You're talking about educational.
I guess in terms of the motion, adding something in about how we would least like the board to discuss the possibility of having this be a part of the approval process for new buildings. So when there's a new building, we understand that the building inspecting department can't really get involved with that. We hear that, but they did have some other suggestions. So I would like the board to consider those suggestions and think about how that may play a role in getting this to happen.
So, and I got the impression that would be relayed to the board in addition to the motion that we make. We don't necessarily put it in.
Because it's in a comment.
Right, it's-
anyway. Yeah, never mind. Okay.
Narrative that I'm right, it's basically a summary, but so the formal motion doesn't necessarily have to capture every nuance. So
We just want them to know.
I appreciate that.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I mean, that has been a central theme from all of these discussions. So that's something I will certainly relay to the board.
Okay, I feel real assured. We'll just stick with the original motion then.
So can I ask a clarifying
Certainly.
question then for Tanya? So just my understanding of what you just said is that you will take all of these comments and give them to the board, but we're just approving or
The motion.
the motion that Commissioner Karas made.
Yeah.
So you'll take these additional comments and say, this motion plus also the other things.
Yeah, I'm basically going to distill this whole
Got it.
whole event into a memo. The motion is kind of the formal aspect of
Yeah,
it, as well as kind of the pursuing of the dark skies certification. That's part of the conversation. Ooh, excuse me. So it'll all be captured.
So the alternative is we just prohibit all outdoor lighting, period.
Yes.
So go ahead.
And I don't mean to interrupt our motion, but I did have a question. And let's pretend that I am someone who's complaining about my neighbor light trespass. And you send out the complaint committee and they write the complaint, they visit the site, and it's still happening.
Mhm.
Based on the amendment, our new amendment, what happens after
So you're asking what the code enforcement process is?
Yeah, what happens after several?
I'm happy,
Thank you.
Commissioner Kelsey, what happens, so you would find, Commissioner Kelly, you would file a code enforcement complaint under this scenario. The sheriff would likely go out in the evening and confirm that there is light pollution. The code enforcement team would send a letter. It would be it's called a code enforcement, what are we calling it? Notice, code complaint notice. Code enforcement says that basically that it has been affirmed that that complaint was received. It was evaluated, and it is confirmed that there is a lighting violation per Deschutes County Code. You have, please contact us. Here's the contact information. You have, 60 days, some period of time to remedy this situation. If there is, let's just take the worst case scenario, there's no response, then eventually we have one case. We don't get many code enforcement cases regarding lighting pollution, but every now and then there's a case and it goes to it's like getting a ticket. You issue them a citation. Then there is a scheduled hearing before an independent hearings officer, which is an attorney. And they have their due process. There's an opportunity to present the evidence of the violation, and then the responsible party gets the opportunity to offer their respective testimony. In the event that would take place, eventually a hearings officer will issue an order that in this scenario, if there's no response and the evidence is clear and objective, there would be issued there would be an order. They would have a violation, and they would receive penalties up for the cost of the proceeding of the hearing, and the penalties compound every day. And so there's very much an incentive to correct this matter. If they still didn't respond, Deschutes County, I think it's safe to say, is not going to foreclose on a property that has a lighting infraction. We might foreclose on or abate or foreclose on a property if it had an eminent public health and safety issue, an unpermitted septic system, an illegal structure. That we have to take that very, very seriously. Lighting pollution is serious, but it won't rise to that level. So at some point under our current policy, based on the valuation of the property, it's basically 10% of the valuation. We will lien the property, and that would, at that point, if there's still lighting and we've liened, let's say the value of the property is $500,000, there's a $50,000 lien, then that's the extent of what we would do. Now, you as a private citizen can initiate what's called a private right of action. And you could go to circuit court and go before a judge and present the same evidence, and the judge could also intervene and issue penalties for that particular party. So there's the route within the community development department. There's private right of action, but that's how it works for most code enforcement circumstances where someone's not responsive. In talking to Angie Havenier, our administrative manager, we're seeing when someone's in code enforcement and they get the letter, more often than not, we don't get a lot, they're responsive. So the threat of the violations and the penalties is enough to incentivize, as it should, where we strive for voluntary compliance. But the current practice is we see correct the violation, in this case, the lighting ordinance.
Thank you.
So my single biggest concern on this process is the resetting the clock. If you've got a code violation issue right now, we adopt this, does that all go away? Because now they've got 5 years to comply.
I think it's a good question that the chair has raised, and obviously, I think it's a policy discussion for the Board of County Commissioners in terms of how long, what's the grandfather period? And you may have thoughts about that. I mean, currently it's, what do you have, 5 years? So, you as part of your recommendation, or as part of the discussion that Tanya is going to distill on behalf of the county commissioners, you could offer, other options for the board's consideration that are more stringent than the 5-year window.
I guess I will do something I normally don't do and move to amend the recommendation to strike 5 and insert 3. Change it to a 3-year grandfather period. Is there a second?
I will second that.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? And I guess I'll go, since I was a maker of the motion. I just think resetting it for another 5 years, because quite frankly, nobody responds to anything that doesn't have a deadline on it. You're not going to see any changes for 4.5 years. And then most people have forgotten anyway and ignore it. But those individuals who are having existing lighting issues are going to have to wait 5 years to see any relief. 3 years is, in my opinion, way too long, but that's a compromise. Go ahead.
I seconded it because I think 3 years is more than long enough. If there's some sort of financial hardship with replacing the lighting, well, I know that Tarek had said that sometimes, I don't want to go on a limb too far, but that sometimes the county has been able to help people with lighting. That's something that you all have done before, but I'm not trying to obligate you to do that. I'm just saying that 3 years seems more than enough money to save up for a new light, or more than enough time to save up for a new light that is not harmful to your neighbor's well-being.
And just to say that, one of the weaknesses is, we don't have the light police driving around and checking everything. So after that 3-year or 5-year period, it doesn't necessarily mean that all of a sudden everyone's going to get these violations. Unfortunately or fortunately, it's a case by case. It's still a complaint-based system regardless. So it's imperfect, but if people do have hardships and then also they're subject to a complaint, then that would get dealt with in that capacity. So I don't know, just a little context on that, on how that would work. So I've taken that 3-year recommendation down.
And the reality is they had 1 year to comply right now. So that gives them a 2-year extension.
Exactly.
That's true.
So any other comments? Okay.
Okay. Just
Yes.
thinking about making sure that a lot of our, not enforcement, but education and making sure, so I want to make sure the board that we're thinking about, okay, what's what's next after this, and making sure that we're getting Kim's number.
And I think was pointed out is our directive is to identify what we'd like to happen.
Mhm.
It's somebody else's bailiwick to determine
How it's
how it's
executed.
executed. Yes.
Yeah, and the beginning of the board conversations with this is they recognize the importance of education and they kind of emphasize that. So I think, it's not going to get lost.
Perfect.
That is definitely a priority of ours. We're going to figure out, all the coolest ways to do it. We'll get the woman, Kim, who testified. We'll rope her in and she'll knock on doors. But yeah, that is a significant portion of this project. I mean, it's really two-pronged, so.
Okay. If there's no other comments, we'll vote on the amendment to strike 5 and insert 3 as far as the grandfather. So all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carries. And now we have the main motion, which is to, if I recall correctly, to recommend approval and encourage the board to actually adopt dark sky certification.
Within the-
or work toward a dark sky certification.
over the next 5 years or so.
So, all those in favor, say aye.
I
All those opposed? Carries. All right. Thank you.
Much. And we'll, the next step is that staff will schedule the hearing with the Board of County Commissioners. We'll keep you all apprised on to that date if you want to come. I'm guessing it'll probably be in the board's schedule sometime in August, hopefully, maybe. We'll see, but I'll let you all know in case you want to participate in that.
Great. Thank you for all your help on that. And like I say, I thought it was very well written.
quick question for staff.
Yes, go ahead.
I think I remember this from before and noticed it in one of the emails, but all of the comments that were submitted for our process carry over to the board, correct?
Correct. We
Okay.
refer them to the same website. It's in a little different, different drop down thingy. But we remind them that that's part of the record as well.
So folks
All there.
don't have to resubmit their comment for
Correct,
that process.
exactly. That,
Okay.
like, for instance, this table is in the record. Everybody's comments are in the record in perpetuity. Good question. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is a work session on text amendments for the repeal of the state wildfire hazard map. Kyle, welcome.
Good evening, Commissioners. For the record, Kyle Collins, Senior Planner. 1 second, I've got a very brief presentation to help us run through this. That. Here we go. All right. So as the chair pointed out, this is a work session in preparation for a public hearing with the Board of County Commissioners that's going to occur next month on August the 13th. It concerns the very recent repeal of the state wildfire hazard map, specifically some conforming amendments that we required to place into our code to make sure that everything aligns in light of that recent Senate bill. I'm going to try to go through this relatively quickly, but feel free to stop me if you have questions. So the project website and the full record you can find here at the link above. I think it's advancing over there. At least it says on my side. Oop.
Yeah.
I'm not sure why it's not. Give me
Maybe getting it out of
Maybe.
slide mode and then just do it manually?
No, I think it was a Zoom problem.
Oh, okay.
Give me 1 second.
No.
Nope. Technical difficulties.
No, we were waiting for you.
Always technical.
only on. Okay.
The technology is protesting. It doesn't want to go down in flames.
Ah, see what you did there.
Your turn.
Good one about lights being covered earlier.
Oh yeah, I got that one too. Yeah, yeah, that was awesome.
I was gonna bemunch. I'm trying to be professional.
Take all the fun out of it.
1 second, Commissioner. Oh,
We'll just pull up the easel and show us the slide deck.
All right, so let's jump back into it. So again, this proposal is to amend our local code to remove some specific references that we had to the state wildfire hazard map, and this is in relation to rural accessory dwelling units. So we have a couple different areas of our code that reference this state hazard map that was recently repealed. The only one that I'm going to be talking about here tonight is accessory dwelling units. The other areas of the code that reference those hazard maps are being taken care of either at a state level and some additional housekeeping amendments that we have forthcoming in a future process. So some background here, in 2021, Senate Bill 391 was passed. Many of the commissioners probably remember this, who went through a fairly robust public process after that to adopt a local program for rural accessory dwelling units here in Deschutes County. There are certain requirements and regulations that went along with that program that were mandated by the state, and one of which was some specific standards related to wildfire hazard mitigation as it relates to building code standards and defensible space standards. During that same legislative session, Senate Bill 762 was passed. This was intended to be a very broad scope project for wildfire mitigation across the entire state. And one of the pieces of that legislation, which was ultimately modified a few years later, was the adoption of this state wildfire hazard map, which was ultimately intended to guide wildfire mitigation regulations statewide for new development. Again, there are two major components to this. One of which was the adoption of these R327 building code standards. You can think of them more broadly as fire hardening standards for new dwellings that were developed, and then defensible space standards, which were ultimately going to be crafted by the Oregon State Fire Marshal and then applied more broadly at a state scale. However, as many of you know, in 2025, there was some pretty significant public concern, and ultimately the state legislature repealed the state wildfire hazard map and all associated regulations. That occurred in June, and the governor actually signed that bill today. And so it is formally in effect as of essentially once that passed. Given the signature of that bill, the state wildfire hazard map is no longer in place. And so there's a mismatch between our local code and what the state law says that we can do. One of the sections, again, the one that we're here to talk about tonight, which deals with rural ADU development, still contains these references to the hazard map. And so we have to align our local code. However, I will go through very quickly those current standards, what it says in our code, which is any properties which are located both what was within then called a high hazard area designated on the map and a designated wildland urban interface area was subject to the following standards. Those were the home hardening standards, those R327 hardening standards in the residential specialty code at the state level, and then defensible space standards, which were to be determined by the Oregon State Fire Marshal. Ultimately, those standards have not been released at this point in time. And the amendments that we're proposing here today would simply remove all references in both sections of our code that deal with rural accessory dwelling units. So every time that we would have had local standards that implemented the state guidance related to wildfire mitigation, just in the construction of ADUs, that language is being stricken out of the code. You can think of this essentially as a type of housekeeping amendment, even though it's tailored and specific to this area. One thing that I will point out, however, it's kind of hot off the presses, so to speak, is Senate Bill 83, which is the bill passed back in June that repealed the hazard map, is ultimately intended to allow for local implementation of what was going to be the state program for wildfire hazard mitigation. That has not been completed yet. There's still some work that has to be done by the State Building Codes Division to amend that R327 portion of code and to build some standards in how local governments would adopt those, as well as those defensible space standards I referenced earlier that are still being crafted by the Oregon State Fire Marshal. They have to release those formally. Both Peter and myself and Will Groves, our planning manager, went to the board yesterday to ask some specific direction. If based on Senate Bill 83, if they'd like us to move forward with seeing what the local community would think about these rules being adopted. And they agreed that we should proceed at the very least with starting a public process there. We don't have a set timeline yet. Like I said, this just happened yesterday. But note that over the coming months, I'll be bringing forward a scope of work and we'll be starting some type of public process to see if the community is interested in adopting these standards locally.
Chair, would you allow me to ask?
Yes, go ahead.
That particular point. Would the concept be, blanket standards without some kind of mapping or categorization of risk and so forth? What you would conceptualize is just sort of blanket standards for all property, or how would that work exactly?
That's a great question. And some of that is still a little bit open-ended right now. So one of the things that I mentioned earlier, the state building codes division still has to come up with the actual statutory language and how this is adopted. So currently, the R327 building code standards have some very prescriptive language about where those rules can be applied, those new building code regulations could be applied, which includes effectively the adoption of a local hazard map, so to speak. But it includes things like topography and weather and vegetation, all the things that ultimately went into the state map. Our understanding right now is that language is going to be stripped away and they're going to provide a lot more latitude for local governments to adopt these however they might see fit. So it could include something like the creation of a map. It could be based on zoning characteristics or property size classifications. It's sort of, it appears that is the direction that it's heading. And we can provide an update to the Planning Commission once we have a better understanding of what this is actually going to look like. We expect to probably know more in the middle of next month would be my guess. That's what we've been told by BCD.
Yeah, so immediately a bunch of questions come to mind, about how every county's criteria and mapping is going to look different. What do you do where county meets county? And also, does that mean we have 36 individual battles over the state that we just had statewide? Man, oh man, oh man.
Potentially, those are great questions. And I think ultimately the point of the public process.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks for entertaining those questions.
Great.
Yeah, I just wanted to put that in there, one, because it just happened and I assume that the Planning Commission would have a similar question given the language in the Senate bill. But also just to update you that is forthcoming. That'll probably be one of the highest priority projects we're working on here in the next 6 to 12 months. Regarding this specific set of amendments, we haven't received any agency comments since we've released the PAPA to the Department of Land Conservation and Development. I've received one public comment just from a member that lives outside the city of Sisters, was generally supportive of the amendments, noting that we needed to align with state law and they had hoped to build an accessory dwelling unit. And they're comfortable with all the remaining portions of the program that we have in place. To wrap things up, as I pointed out, this is just a work session for the Planning Commission, so we won't be having a hearing with this body. This was just to give you an update that we effectively have to rush this to presses to make sure that our local code aligns with the state rules. But we do have a public hearing with the Board of County Commissioners next month on August the 13th. My contact information is here on the screen if anybody has questions regarding that or wants to weigh in at a future date. And with that, I'll open it up to any questions that you might have.
Great, thanks. Anybody have any questions? Seems pretty straightforward to me. If not, thank you. Oh, go ahead. Any comments?
No comments from me at this point.
All right.
More to come.
Tanya, do you have anything? Nicole? Uh-oh.
I am here to give you an update on the status of the 2040 comprehensive plan. So I think Stephanie may have kind of partially alluded to this at the last meeting during staff comments. We're intending to have second reading on July 23rd. The board held a first reading on June 25th, and immediately on the next day, we were notified from the Land Use Board of Appeals of a decision called Destiny Court. So this was a quasi-judicial application to rezone property from EFU to MUA 10. And it also included an initial request for a planned unit development, although that portion of the application essentially was withdrawn from consideration and is now tolled. In review of that decision, LUBA highlighted a policy that touches on the comprehensive plan, which is why it's relevant. In the 2011 comprehensive plan, which is the document that this PAZC, Plan Amendment Zone Changes, we call them, was reviewed under, LUBA specifically pointed to a policy 331 that provides a limitation on minimum parcel size for new rural residential parcels. So it essentially says the minimum parcel size for new residential parcels shall be 10 acres. This, according to LUBA, conflicts with the county zoning code because in the MUA 10 zone, we allow for cluster and plan unit developments that do allow for sub 10-acre parcels. So in times of conflict between the comprehensive plan and the zoning code, case law has told us that the comprehensive plan provision prevails. So that's why we often try to avoid shall language, as you all remember probably from the comprehensive plan process, because you typically want your comprehensive plan to be more the Constitution and your zoning code to be more of the criteria. So in this case, the comprehensive plan, because it has that shall language, it prevails with the conflict due to in our zoning code. So this decision was remanded on another item, but in the decision, LUBA found this policy could potentially place a local limitation on cluster and planned unit developments, and they essentially asked the county for more information. Because we got this decision while the comprehensive plan was still open, we hadn't conducted second reading yet, we thought it would be worthwhile to add a policy addressing this as part of the 2040 plan update. So we actually were originally proposing to remove policy 331, that was from the 2011 plan, as we didn't think it was necessary since we had requirements in the zoning code. From what LUBA has told us in this decision, it would be helpful to provide some guidance in the comprehensive plan to support our zoning code provisions that are already in place, and note that we do intend to allow cluster PUDs. So as part of this, staff brought forward this topic to the board on Monday, on the 21st, and the board voted to reopen the written record. This allows staff to introduce a new policy to address this issue and also allow for additional written testimony to be submitted on this item. So we're specifically allowing additional written testimony, again, no oral testimony, related to Destiny Court, the decision, cluster and planned unit developments, and minimum lot sizes in rural residential zones. So notice was sent on July 22nd, and the record is left open until Friday, August 1st at 4 p.m. You might be asking why not hold a full public hearing? We are in the reconsideration process, and the decision is due to LUBA on September 8th. So we're on a pretty tight timeline, and we wouldn't have necessarily been able to meet some of the noticing requirements for a full traditional public hearing. So that's why we requested the written record be open only. We did ask for additional time, but in doing that, as part of the reconsideration process, you need consent from the other parties involved. And Central Oregon Land Watch denied that request for additional time. They felt we had adequate time in the process to gather testimony. So specifically, I just wanted to note, all this information is on our website, bit.ly/2040 reconsideration, including that new proposed policy language. It's new proposed policy 1011, and it essentially carries over the language from the 2011 plan and adds on to it. So it says the minimum lot size for new residential parcels shall be 10 acres, notwithstanding for cluster and planned unit developments, and then it provides some guidance. I also wanted to note we did tack on noting that parcels can't be less than 2 acres, and they need to comply with applicable provisions of OAR 660-004. That's the provision of state law that ensures that in terms of minimum lot size, uses are rural and they're not urban. So that's why we included that language. So I was trying to keep that brief, but I'm sure that was a lot of information. So just wanted to keep you apprised of that. And again, the record's open until Friday, August 1st, and you can visit the website for more information. But Peter, did you have anything else?
No, that was an excellent summary, and it is a lot to unpack. Deliberations are scheduled for August 11th. Second reading is anticipated for August 27th. So we're the staff is really looking forward to getting this beyond the local approval process, and if it gets appealed to the Land Use Board of Appeals, we believe, based on the coordination that's occurred really since this spring, that we've done everything we can to justify the comprehensive plan and its goals and policies and existing conditions to reflect the process to date. So, yeah, we're looking forward to getting through this local process in the next 4 to 5 weeks.
Is, Chair, if you'll indulge me.
Yeah, go ahead.
Is appeal a near certainty, a 0% chance, 50-50, or who knows?
Well, I think it's the latter. One always hopes that, these local, there's been such a robust public process here. It's this document, I believe personally has something for everybody. It doesn't matter what one's political affiliation is. It provides excellent guidance and direction, and I think it reflects the opportunities and challenges that Deschutes County faces as the fastest growing county in the state. So I would like to believe that this additional process will shore up any inconsistencies. Nonetheless, there's, if you look at the fact that Landwatch submitted a petitioner's brief, I can't help but feel like there's a desire to continue to litigate on some of the issues that involve rural development, and this is just another opportunity that they have the right to challenge the way the county is responding to rural development actions or opportunities. So we'll wait and see. Hopefully it's we've done everything to kind of plug those inconsistencies, but it's just the county we live in, so anything's possible.
Great. Peter, did you have anything more to add?
I do have an update for you, but not on the comp plan.
Okay. Is that everything you had?
I think just another quick update, the farm and forest amendments that you approved, we're working with administration on a hearing date, so that'll likely be in late August, early September.
Great, thank you. Peter?
Yeah, so a couple of things to unpack. Let's see how well I do that. I want to recognize, first of all, thanks to the Planning Commission for a very productive meeting. I want to recognize this bulge that is reflective of today's direction from the Planning Commission. There's quite a number of, there's 5 or 6 items that are before the board or very close to getting before the board based on your decisions today. One of those was the Dark Skies Amendment, which you recommended today, the 10% property line minor variance text amendment hearing deliberation. You just did that today. Kyle, as noted in this work session, is going to be engaging the board next month on just getting our rural accessory dwelling unit code in alignment with state law. Nicole just mentioned the farm and forest improvements project. That's going to the board. And she also mentioned comp plan reconsideration. So there's a lot before the board. So I put that as a backdrop. Kyle mentioned the conversation that we had yesterday with the Board of County Commissioners. Will Groves, the planning manager, our planning manager, led that discussion. I think he sent you the memorandum of those topics. Let me know if did you get, yeah, good. Because I'm just going to recap what came out of that. Kyle mentioned the wildlife mitigation fire hardening opportunity. The board did express interest in having staff bring back a scope of work that would lay out a public process that could presumably, and we don't want to get ahead of the or the laws, or the rules that the Building Codes Division is perfecting. But I'm anticipating that with the scope of work that is brought to the board in the fall, that the Planning Commission is going to be on some road tours. Don't know what that might look like. It could look like we hold a series of public hearings in certain corners of our county to talk about fire, wildfire mitigation, fire hardening, and the opportunities that are expressed in Senate Bill 83. Whether those are hearings or workshops or open houses, the time to do that is in the fall. School's in session, summer's over, and presumably our vulnerability to wildfire has dramatically dissipated. So that's one project that Kyle made mention that he's going to lead, that is forthcoming. Another project that was a priority on Wednesday was to initiate the Terrebonne Community Plan update. And Will's mentioned this to you a couple times. The board was persuaded, they certainly understand this, but we framed it this way, that, with the Terrebonne Sanitary District, the creation of that district, the fact that they're putting in sewer mains as we speak on Highway 97, they have expectations to make that available to the businesses and those properties that are within their district as soon as potentially 2028. It's time to engage Terrebonne. It also wraps around the clear and objective standards we have for housing. Another module that is on Kyle's list of responsibilities is to bring back clear and objective standards for multifamily residential opportunities. Well, you can't have multifamily residential opportunities in Terrebonne now. We don't have the infrastructure for it, but we likely will. And this is another opportunity to engage the community, the residents, the businesses, to talk about how they want to plan for their community, knowing that this infrastructure is really on the horizon. So our team will be bringing back a scope of work, laying out how we want to engage the community, learning from what happened, constructively, imperfectly, how we engaged Tumalo, but how we can perfect that and engage the community, likely starting later this fall. The third item, which really isn't in the Planning Commission's wheelhouse, we will keep you posted, of course. I've mentioned once or twice Senate Bill 1154. This was the legislation that passed the legislature, awaits a governor's signature as it pertains to the declaration of a groundwater quality area of concern. So that did pass. You'll recall that when a declaration is made by the Department of Environmental Quality, and really through the Environmental Quality Commission, it triggers a number of resources: monitoring plans, outreach, interagency coordination in the legislation. And I didn't realize this until it was brought up to me recently. If a declaration is made, Goal 11 exceptions are waived. You don't need one. So the board, and I should have, I'll come back to Senate Bill 1154. When this was brought up, the board said they're really interested to understanding more about it. So I anticipate sometime this fall, the Department of Environmental Quality staff will debrief the board about this legislation, how it fits into their work plan, what if there needs to be rulemaking, kind of how it fits with their overall kind of set of responsibilities. The reason why Senate Bill 1154 came up is staff respectfully suggested to the board that they defer the Newberry Country Plan for the time being, because we didn't feel like there was really a catalytic event. Like I just mentioned with Terrebonne, similar to the wildfire mitigation opportunity as afforded by Senate Bill 83. So the board agreed to that deferral, at least for a year. And part of the reason for that is you have the Senate Bill 1154 that's hanging out there. And we also, I think I mentioned to you, the property manager in the property department, they have for sale 2 quadrants in a neighborhood that the county owns. It's called the Newberry neighborhood. Those 2 quadrants have been listed for sale since November of 2024. There haven't been any takers. As soon as one or both of those quadrants sell, they'll sell for over $1 million. Those resources are explicitly dedicated for groundwater protection in southern Deschutes County. So that's another kind of, catalytic event, a triggering event that would help us engage the community around something that's really, really substantive. So for the time being, Newberry Country Plan, is deferred. I wanted to kind of wrap this all together. We have colleagues this August that there's some big events taking place. Nicole is getting married in the middle of November, and Kyle and Emily are expecting their first child this month. And it's great to celebrate that. I share this and wrap it all together. Again, mentioning all the work that's currently before the board. We don't have anything on the agenda for your next meeting on August 14th, but I was texting Will. Staff is preliminarily letting you know we're kind of stretched. We've got people getting married and, chasing down a newborn. But we're shooting for a panel discussion, if not on August 28th, then your first meeting in September. This is something that the Planning Commission identified that you wanted to take advantage of when resources are available. And I just want you to know that we're thinking about that. As you recall, the two highest, you had two different buckets. Your big bucket was water resources and regional housing. So we'll start, Will's team, with resources available, we'll start figuring out how to kind of convene a panel. It may not happen on August 28th, but I think it's something that we can presumably get scheduled for your first meeting in September. Your second meeting in September, as a reminder, is a joint meeting with the Board of County Commissioners. So this commission, it may not feel like it because normally we're out of here. It seems like every meeting by 7, but you guys have really provided some tremendous direction to staff. And like I said on the front end, many of the items that we've brought forward to you are now before the board, and we need to kind of get those through the local process. So, Mr. Chairman, that was a lot to convey, a lot to tie together, but we're wanting to, again, be responsive to the Planning Commission, recognizing your priorities, at the same time, knowing that we have some celebrations ahead of us and some family leave that is warranted. And, we'll do what we can with the resources we have to continue to kind of fulfill the board's directives and also kind of the Planning Commission's priorities as well. So thanks for that opportunity. I'll turn it over to you.
Great, thank you. Commissioner Stopkamp.
Yeah, I guess I'll first say congrats to Kyle for upcoming baby. That's exciting. That's why I've been virtual the last 4 meetings. We've got a 2-month-old now. And then congrats to Nicole also for upcoming wedding. This is probably for a future work plan, but I just wanted to share it because it's fresh on my mind right now. And I don't know if it's Planning Commission where it would originate, but I'd love the discussion of what can Deschutes County do with its county-owned properties for fire safety. Because yesterday, it looks like where this 1-acre Beechcraft fire was between Bend and Redmond, just off Highway 97 there. And then actually during this meeting, I was seeing there was a vegetation fire. They call it the Greenwood Fire. It was just a little bit north of the Redmond Airport on county-owned land. So I don't know if it's the Board of County Commissioners to carry that or whether it's like a fire discussion panel. But I'm kind of just curious if there's anything, since we're the Citizen Input Committee, where receiving citizen input on the fire risks on Deschutes County-owned land. I know we don't have the jurisdiction over Forest Service and BLM, but I think it's something that'd be worth exploring. So I don't know if Peter has anything to add on that, but just want to share that thought. Other than that, thanks for a good meeting tonight.
Great, thanks. Some good ideas. Commissioner Karas.
No, just thanks everyone. I thought it was a great discussion. Congratulations, you guys. Yeah, that's about it.
Great, thanks.
No comments.
No comments? Commissioner Kelly?
No comments.
Commissioner Hofkamp?
Brief ones, in regards to Peter about kind of I think you characterize it with bolus of issues that we have come through us that are on to the commission's plate. I kind of remain mildly interested in the notion, I mentioned this earlier, of if the Board of Commissioners was interested in making whatever changes are necessary in order to empower the Planning Commission to have sort of final authority in regards to really routine matters. I don't know where the line would be, but some of those that have come before us in regards to text amendments, clear and objective, simple consistency with state statute, in a way that productively clears a little bit from their plate. Anything that would have, of course, anything that's substantive would be rightly the governing body's purview. They are elected after all and more accountable to the public. But where, you know, we're getting a number of these different sorts of issues before us where we have very, very little public input. There may or may not be a hearing required. We're capable of doing the hearings. We don't get much on some of those. Anyway, I'm just mildly interested in that. It's certainly not a fall on my sword kind of thing. And only if my colleagues were interested and only if the commission was interested, be a natural thing to bring up at our joint meeting with the commission in September. I'm likely to forget that. But anyway, if you know, if it comes up in that conversation, that would be great. And again, only if they were interested. If they're not, so be it. And then just a reminder, I'll be gone for our August meetings if we have them. And we'll see you colleagues in September.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
And I would also like to extend my congratulations to both of you and appreciate everybody for another nice productive meeting that didn't take all night. So thanks, everybody. And with that, we'll adjourn the meeting.